All right, today we're going to do some basics on trigonometry. It's going to be today, tomorrow. We're going to spend a few days on this. And you're going to need to know this for Algebra 2 next year. And so today we're just going to do the basics of trigonometry. What is trigonometry? Well, it comes from two Greek terms, trigon meaning triangle and metron meaning measure. So we're going to measure things in triangles. In the previous chapters, we measured sides of triangles. Now we're going to find sides and angles and use a ratio. But the ratio, we're just going to divide two numbers. Here's our ratio. We have three things. We have sine, cosine, and tangent. On your calculator, you're going to see it look like this. But it's still pronounced sine, not sin. Next is cosine. We're going to call it cosine, not cos. We're going to call it cosine. And the last one is tangent. You'll see it on your calculator like that. So those are our three terms. How do they work? Okay. So this slide is pretty busy. Let's look at sine. The sine of angle A equals opposite over hypotenuse. So let's look at angle A. What side is opposite of angle A? Straight opposite of angle A. Draw a dotted line, and I'm going to call that opposite. The next word is hypotenuse. We always know that the hypotenuse is always opposite the 90-degree angle. So this is the hypotenuse. So to find my sine of my angle, the sine of angle A equals the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse. So A over C. Okay, we're just going to look at angle A here. So angle A, angle A, angle A. Okay, so if we're just looking at angle A, we know the hypotenuse and the opposite. If it's right next to, didn't mean to do that. If it's right next to it, meaning those two letters are right next to each other, the side next to the angle is called the adjacent. We've talked about that. Adjacent means next to. So now if I want to find the cosine of A, I take the adjacent side divided by the opposite side to find cosine. Lastly, I have tangent of A. To find the tangent of A, I take the opposite divided by adjacent. So to summarize that, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And this is what you're going to write in your notes. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. And we call that SOHCAHTOA. That helps us remember what angle goes with what side. What trigonometric function goes with what two sides. So sine goes with opposite hypotenuse. So cosine goes with opposite and adjacent. Adjacent hypotenuse. TOA, tangent, goes with opposite and adjacent. Let's put these into practice. Okay, we're just going to do finding the sine, cosine, tangent of J. So I always like to start out and circle my angle. Sine of J. What's the sine of J? Well, I have to label my sides. This is opposite of J. This is the hypotenuse because it's opposite 90. And this is adjacent because it's next to J. The most common error I see is that students don't know how to label the sides. Opposite is on the other side of the triangle. Adjacent is right next to it. So sine is, I always write this out so I remember it, SOHCAHTOA. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, which the opposite is 5, and 13. So what we would do is we would just actually say sine of j is 5 over 13. Then cosine of j is adjacent 12 over hypotenuse 13. So that's the adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent of j equals the opposite, which is 5, divided by the adjacent, which is 12. And so that is how you label your sides and find how they fit together. What you can do then is you can write it as a decimal. So that's what the next one's asking. I'm not going to show you the next one. It's the same thing. 5 divided by 13 and you write a decimal. 12 divided by 13, you write a decimal. 5 divided by 12 in your calculator, put a decimal. Now, here's how we do it with algebra. We need to find x. First step, we circle our angle. The second step, always have SOHCAHTOA ready to go. The second step is to label our sides, opposite and adjacent. I have O and A. Which one has O and A? We're going to use tangent. So the tangent of 64 equals the opposite, which is x, divided by the adjacent. And now we just do some algebra. We're going to do some algebra here, so we're going to multiply both sides by we're going to multiply both sides by 11. So times 11 times 11. So 11 tangent 64 equals x. So here's all you have to do in your calculator. You literally just type this in. You don't even have to type in multiplication. By the way, calculator should be in degree mode. So if you're not in degree mode, and by the way, iPhones are very hard to use for this. You might want to use the Google calculator, but you want to put it in degree mode. Okay? So I'm on my Google calculator right now, and I'm going to try it. Okay? I literally just typed in 11 tan 64, and you should have gotten 22.55 for my opposite side. Okay? You don't even have to type in times because the calculator is already knowing you're typing in times. So 11 tangent 64, type those in your calculator. If you have a graphing calculator, they're really easy to use. You get 22.5. All right, let's do another one. We got 2 here. I'm always going to have my handy dandy SOHCAHTOA out and ready to go. Okay. First step, circle my angle and then label my sides. 12 is opposite of 63. X is hypotenuse. So I look at my O and my H. I'm going to use sine. Sine of 63 equals opposite, which is 12, over hypotenuse, which is x. Okay, when we get x in the bottom, I'm going to teach you guys an easy way to do it. We're going to turn this into a proportion and cross multiply. So we get the sine of 63. That's all one number, by the way. Sine by itself is not a number. Times x equals 12. Divide both sides by sine of 63. And here is what you type in your calculator. 12 divided by sine of 63. So I'm using my Google calculator because I don't like my iPhone one for this. Divided by sine of 63 equals, and I should get 13 point, we'll round up, 13.47. It should be larger than 12, right? So that's going to be our tip-off of how to get that answer. Okay, let's, I'm going to erase this. Let's do another problem here. And I circle my angle, and I look at the x, and the x is right next to the 29, isn't it? So that's adjacent. 29 is the hypotenuse, opposite 90. So I'm looking for cosine. So cosine of 29 equals adjacent, which is x, over hypotenuse, which is 29. Multiply both sides by 29. And literally in your calculator, you are just going to type that. You don't even need a multiplication sign. 29 cosine of 29. Remember, be in degrees. I'm going to get 25.36 as my answer. Should be less than 29, right? 29 should be the biggest number. Okay, here's 3 more problems. I want you guys to try these on your own. Okay, we circle. We're going to label opposite and adjacent. So, ka, toa. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. So, opposite and adjacent is tangent. So, tangent of 36 equals opposite over adjacent, x over 7. I'm going to multiply both sides by 7. So 7 tangent of 36 equals x. I am going to type it in my handy dandy Google calculator. Since you guys all have computers and Chromebooks, that's what you should be using. Unless you have a, I don't have another calculator handy, I should. 5.09 is what we get. Let's move on down. I circle my angle. 15 is adjacent. It's right next to it. X is hypotenuse. So I know it's going to be cosine because it's A and H, ca. So cosine of 70 equals 15 over x. X is in the bottom, so I'm going to put that over a 1, and I am going to cross multiply. Cosine of 70 is one number times x equals 15. Divide both sides by cosine of 70. This is what you type in your calculator. And then I'm going to write my answer over here. 15 divided by cosine of 70 equals 43.86. I'll round up. Most of these answers will be decimals, by the way. You guys always ask me that. They're pretty much all going to be decimals. All right, last example here. Circle my angle. This is my opposite. This is my hypotenuse. So if I have O and H, I know that is the sine of 15 equals opposite over hypotenuse, which is 12. Multiply both sides by 12. And now I type that in my calculator. 12 sine of 15 equals 3.11. We'll round up.